Hi.
Morning, everybody. Good morning. This is Richard Wee from On the Ball with James and Julian. James, how are you, James?
I'm good, but I'm just wondering, on my Facebook page, I'm not seeing the video. So how does that work?
Well, I think
refresh.
no. To be fair, because we are scheduled to go live at 11, so I think maybe it's. I'm checking our.
It says
we are
live
live.
now.
We are live. Yeah, I can see we are live. All right. You guys want to share first? So anyway, good morning to everybody. I'm Richard Wee, repeat, together with my two buddies, James and Julian. This is On the Ball, and we are in episode 4. This is our mini sports talk show. There's three amigos who have nothing else better to do on a Saturday morning. I say that every week, but we have a chat on sports. And hoping to go back to the stadiums and watch the match. So, morning, James. Morning, Julian.
Morning, Rick.
Morning, buddy.
So, I just I'm doing a watching party on my Facebook page. You can do, yep. So today, ladies and gentlemen, our format of the show has always been in recent times about first having a chat about the latest sports news. Maybe James and Julian can share some sports news. But today's topic, we are going to have this issue about the match of all times. And I understand that James and Julian have some disagreement on what is the match of all times. And personally, I have my own opinion which is the match of all time. And we're going to have quite a mini debate here going on today. So, Julian, you have any sports news to share with us today?
Talk about setting me up. Yes, I do. Okay, so I want to talk about VAR. It's driving me absolutely insane. I mean, I'm actually a fan of VAR. I think it's a great idea. I love the fact that there's a chance to get things right. What wounded me up over the years, particularly as an Everton fan, was all the rubbish decisions that went against us. And so what do? They bring it into the English Premier League, which I watch, obviously, being an Englishman and being from Liverpool. The problem is you've got a terrible implementation. It's the worst implementation. There's more problems with VAR than there is with just the referee. Case in point was this week. There were 3 midweek games, 3 penalty shouts, and the EPL, the Premier League themselves, said VAR got it wrong. How can that be? They've got video evidence. They can watch it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times to get it right, and they got 3 wrong in 3 games. That's nuts. Absolutely nuts. You know, and there was one incident earlier on in the week where the referee went to a pitch side monitor and got the decision correctly, right? Remember the World Cup when it was first introduced, right? World Cup. I don't remember anyone saying, oh, that was a terrible decision. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, it's rubbish. No, because they all went to pitch side monitors. They take a couple of seconds more, but they went to a pitch side monitor, checked it out. The referee went, yeah, that's a penalty, or that's not a penalty, that's a foul, whatever. The English way of doing it is just been so haphazard and so changing every 5 minutes. That needs to change, and it's a big, big problem.
So why are they reluctant to go and look at the monitor pitch side? What reason do they have?
Well, see, the British or the English decided they didn't want to do that at first. They decided that they were going to advise, the video assistant referees were going to advise the main referee through the earpiece. And that sounds great, but unfortunately, it's not been great because Pierluigi Collina, the great referee, actually, I say great, but he's not great in my mind.
I don't like him, yeah.
He robbed Everton of the Champions League. Anyway, that's another thing. Anyway, he's now the head of referees, and he said what's happening is the VAR referees are supporting the referee on the pitch because it's like a stand behind my buddy type thing rather than what's the fact. And he said that's got to stop. It's a problem. And luckily, I think what was what he called Rick was saying that I know it may have been you, James, that FIFA are now going to look after VAR, not the International Football Board, which are the rule makers of football. So FIFA are now going to do it because it's got to change. Every week there's an issue, and it shouldn't be. The VAR was put in to get rid of these issues, and it's made it worse.
If the purpose is to get the call right, then they can't be there to support the call on the pitch. They can't be there to support the referees. It's about getting it right.
America has it in football, American football. I don't recall there being any issues. Do you, James?
Oh, there have been issues in every sport, especially in the first year or two. But after that, there's generally a better way. And if it's been in place for 4 years now, you say? I mean, there's no
1 year. So this year.
Okay. Well, then if that's the case, I mean, 1 year, there might be some bugs, but they got to work it out. I think FIFA has been doing it much longer. So if they come in and take it over, then there should be fewer issues like this. But 3 in 1 day, that's unbelievable. 3 separate matches, different sets of crew.
And you know what's annoying? All the decisions that VA have got wrong, Everton matches. Everton on the wrong side of things as well. It's not as though Everton have been on the right side of the decision. We've been on the wrong side of the decision. It pees me off.
It's been proven now that everyone is against Everton. There's a conspiracy.
Exactly.
You heard it here first. On the ball. We broke.
I'm glad you noticed, James. I'm glad you noticed.
But it was strange. It was really strange. But speaking about that, in US, the correct me if I'm wrong, James. Many of the sports have been using the American version of VAR for a long time, really. And of course, you guys have
all the sports. I think it almost started, being used a lot in the US and the NFL, and then other sports started using it. And only then did FIFA look at it as a potential solution in football. But football change is usually a little bit slower. It's been around the longest. It has the most tradition. So obviously they're gonna be reluctant to look at goal line technology.
What do you guys think about the thing that they have in cricket? And I think they have it in rugby as well. I might be mistaken, but they definitely have it in cricket, where you only have 3 calls on VAR. So the manager decides when to check VAR. So he can sort of press a button or raise a flag or whatever it is and say, okay, I think that was the wrong decision. I want VAR to check it. And so he has and the thing is, he has to be very careful when he uses his 3AR, because how many times have you seen, I've run out of, it's in cricket, I've run out of challenges, that's the word, challenges. And so, an obvious out or an obvious, wicket or whatever, he can't challenge it because he's run out of challenges. What do you think of those out there?
I think that is definitely the way to go. You shouldn't have a free number of challenges. Even in tennis, you've got 3 per set, and in the NFL, you get penalized if you get the call wrong. They take away a timeout, which can be very important.
Very cool.
I think if like in football, if you challenge, but maybe if you lose the challenge, you lose a substitution. Or if there's something like that, then they think very carefully if they want to use it.
That's funky. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So they won't just willy-nilly be challenging all the time, or if they have 3 maximum, that's another good one. But they should.
And that then gives an extra element of excitement to the game.
Yeah. Will he raise the flag? Will he challenge?
Yeah. And then you got the controversy of oh my God, the coach didn't raise his flag for that. Is he stupid? That type of thing,
Absolutely. I think right here on the ball, we've again established a new policy for FIFA. FIFA, listen to On the Ball. We've got your new policy right here.
Yeah, you heard it first on the ball, right? But
exactly.
Guys, the funny thing is that we were discussing about the match last week. The Frank Lampard goal by England, the goal in the World Cup at Africa, which actually led to the VAR, because FIFA for the longest time didn't want to have VAR in soccer. Yeah. So, but now that we have it VAR in England, in the British leagues, I must say it's a disastrous VAR so far. Unless, of course, if you are from the winning club, because it seems almost every VAR goes towards that way. And some of my friends who are Liverpool fans will tell me, "Oh, Richard, it's justice. All the while we've been robbed." So there you go. I suppose it's the way, at which angle you look at. But certainly, the what happened 2 days ago was a mockery. All the 3 penalties were not penalties. The Everton Southampton one, for example, the Southampton player, I think it was Ward-Prowse, his name. He was already falling down and he fell on Gomez. But there you go. It was a penalty.
Yeah.
Nonsense.
Well, it sucks, man.
Okay,
hopefully we'll see a change.
Today, our topic of discussion is about this match of the game, match of all times. What we have?
Your mind went blank, man, didn't it, Rick? Your mind went blank, man.
Yeah, I was just trying to find a word for better. So, for today, we are going to discuss what we think was the match of all time, and I think this is a fantastic topic, ladies and gentlemen, because every one of us have our own favorite badminton match, table tennis. You know, those two players were hitting the tiny orange ball over the net, and then we have the classic NBA 7 games going to the last buzzer points. And then Michael Jordan will pop in his magical shot, or that fantastic football game, you're down 4-0 and you win 5-4. So I'm sure we're going to discuss something like that today. And I'm going to invite...
Rick, were we going to discuss like a bunch of them rather than just like... Because when I sort of did a bit of research and sort of what are some classic games that I can remember as a kid or even, you know, as an adult, they weren't like, I think it's the best ever, because I think it's almost impossible to choose one match over every other, because, you know, what's my greatest one and what's James's greatest one and what's yours greatest one, you know, we could argue all day, but we'll never come to a conclusion.
That's why we're here. That's why we're here talking, because I think my matches are greater than your matches already. I know it.
You stole mine already, so don't even go there.
Don't get me started. My matches are still the best. Wait till I show it to you. Don't pray.
We'll see what the listeners think. We'll see what the listeners, who the listeners agree with. We'll see.
So, James, what is your view of the match of time? You know, all this talk, no use. Tell us, what is your match of all time?
Well, my greatest match of all, one of the greatest matches of all times. It's not the greatest. I'll save my greatest for last. But I think I'm going to stick with the FA Cup match 2016 between Reading and Arsenal.
Capital One Cup, mate. Capital One Cup.
Oh, is that the League Cup?
Correct.
Okay, League Cup. Sorry, Capital One Cup. Sorry, Capital One. It was an unbelievable match. Reading, obviously, big underdog. They go ahead 4-0. Arsenal at halftime. Arsenal in the first half. So Arsenal's, you know, down. I think they pulled one back just before half. Walcott scored to go down 4-1. But it was looking like Reading was going to pull a huge upset. But then, you know, and even in the first half, Koscielny had an own goal. But in the second half, he comes back. Koscielny scores a goal, so he helps with the Arsenal comeback. Arsenal ties it up at 4. Amazing match. Then they go up 5-4 in extra time. I mean, this is like a crazy match. They think, okay, we must have won, surely. Then Reading pulls an equalizer, 5-5 in extra time. So, I mean, it's already just an insane match, back and forth, a match that an American can love with a lot of scoring. And but then Walcott, you know, pulls them ahead 6-5, and then they get a junk goal 7-5 at the end. But literally, I mean, one of the greatest comebacks ever by Arsenal. Almost a huge upset by Reading, and for Reading to come back after being up 4-0, being down 5-4, to come back and score and tie it up again at 5-5. You know, everyone thought they were out of it, but you know, and it was just a back and forth, a lot of action, a lot of scoring. You know, a sort of an underdog story. Really, really great match. The team that was expected to win went through. But it was an amazing, dramatic match, and I think that was one of the greatest matches of all time.
I can't disagree with that. I think for pure enjoyment, pure excitement, you know, 7-5 is cracking, absolutely cracking. I mean, you can have really good games at 1-0. You can have really good 0-0 draws even, but at 7-5, you just haven't got time to breathe. That's it, you know. But you know, can you imagine if everyone's going, yeah, well done, Arsenal. Imagine if you're Reading.
Oh,
You have 4-0
close.
halftime.
So close,
And you're thinking to yourself, we're going to win. We're closer to.
Yeah, no way. Yeah.
This is us. This is us. And then slowly but surely, that creeping feeling. Oh my God, they're coming back. They're coming back. Oh no, they've gone ahead. Oh, we've come back. Oh, we've lost again. I mean, just the roller coaster of emotions. It's just it's brilliant. See, that is why I've worked in sport for 27 years. That's why I'm a sport nut. That's why sport is better than any drama. It's better than anything out there because it's unpredictable. You can't write the script. You cannot write the script.
Yeah, we need these types of things in our lives, and for some people it might be music, for some people it might be art, but for us it's sport, and we need these distractions from life and things to look at and things to look forward to, and yeah, it's unbelievable.
But you know what, guys? I suspect the Malaysian bookie was involved in that game, lah.
Right, I've been in Malaysia 18 years, right?
Yeah.
And every single time something strange happens like that on the team, every Malaysian I know says, must have been the bookies, must have been the bookies.
To avoid sedition, only a Malaysian can say that about Malaysian bookie. We got the best. We got the best.
Which match is there not a Malaysian bookie involved in?
Can you remember that match? Someone went to switch off the lights in the game against Crystal Palace to cancel the game.
I can't remember that. Yeah, I don't remember much. Yeah, I do remember something like that. Yeah, that's nuts.
5-7, 12 goals in one game. But James, that was just a Mickey Mouse club. Some people a cup. People will say the Capital One Cup is just a Mickey Mouse Cup. So maybe Arsenal wasn't focused.
That's because Everton have never won it. Definitely until we win it, it's a Mickey Mouse club. Then it's an illegitimate tournament.
Hey, if they're playing the game, it must be important enough to play. So whatever.
Yeah.
All hats off to Arsenal for winning that. And to me, a match. I disagree with Julian on a cracking 0-0 match. I don't know. I've never seen one of those, but
true, I have
7-5 to an American. That's where it's at. I wish every match was 7-5. It would be awesome. America would love football if every match was 7-5.
I remember this Arsenal against Reading game. It was awesome. 12 goals in one game. Wow. Similar one was the Newcastle game against the Arsenal. Ironically, against Arsenal. 4-0 down, then Newcastle came back 4-4. But what about you, Julian? Can you top that? 12 goals in one game. Can you top that? Can you beat that?
I've got 2 games, and they happened recently last year. Unfortunately, that they involve my dreaded, hated rivals, Liverpool. But there was two semi-finals of the UEFA Champions League last year. You got Spurs, Ajax, Liverpool, Barcelona. Liverpool 3-0 down from the first leg. Everyone's expecting them to go out. This is on the Wednesday night. So Liverpool 3-0 down. Spawny buggers go and win 4-0 at home. Only Liverpool could do that because they're just a bunch of spawny, lucky, whatever. That was pretty amazing, right? That was pretty amazing. So then, the next day, you had the other semi-final, Spurs Ajax, and Ajax were on fire that season, last season, I should say, playing really well, great players, and obviously, unfortunately, this season everyone's gone and bought there. Hey, by the way, Rick, when you show the article like this, it doesn't add a great deal because you just do the picture page rather than the videos because showing a load of text you can't read it. Anyway,
okay,
that's
go on.
But anyway, so you got Spurs, Ajax, cracking team. What happens? They're 1-0 up from the first leg, but it's it's all to play for. 1-0 is not a big. That's the Liverpool one you're showing, but the one that I loved was the Ajax Spurs game because 1-0 down. They then score another goal. Ajax score another goal, 2-0 on aggregate. I think it's the away goal. Yeah, it's the away goal. Was it? Oh, I can't remember. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Actually, it does. Funny enough, it does matter because how Spurs won was the away goals rule. But they're 2-0 down. Really unlikely that they're going to get back. They then score another goal. So, sorry, It's 2-0 to Ajax, right? And then what happens? Spurs come back from the dead. They're 3-0 down on aggregate, right? Crazy. Not, and there's only, I don't know, about an hour to play. And then Lucas Moura, who, to be honest, has always been a bit part player, great player. I really like him as a player, but has always been a bit part player for Spurs. Comes back, scores a hat trick. Scenes that are crazy, that are mad. It's one of those things you think you're dead and buried. An hour gone, you're 3-0 down to probably one of the best teams in Europe at that time. You think the wheels are coming off of your season, and then Lucas Moura steps up and scores 3, making it 3-3 on aggregate. But they go through on the away goals rule. I mean, for me, the drama in 2 nights of football for the same competition, 2 English sides going through to the UEFA Champions League final, I think that's pretty tough to top when it comes to comebacks. I think that's one of the great. Those are 2 of the greatest comebacks of all time. Particularly Liverpool actually beating Barcelona. I mean, Barcelona are with Messi and co, almost unbeatable at that time. But as much as I hate the buggers, fair play to them.
But that was truly a Champions League match, real true Champions League level, isn't it?
I remember watching that match in Minnesota with my mother, and we're sitting in the U.S. watching the game live, and it was and all of us were like amazed at the quality of the goals, amazed at the level of play. And my mom was like, I should really watch this soccer a lot more. We're running around the apartment looking like, oh, this is fun. So, I mean, that was an awesome game. I must say, Liverpool-Barcelona was an amazing game.
Yeah, that was very cool.
And Moura stepping up. I mean, when a player is hot, hats off to Spurs for finding him, because when he's hot, you get to him the ball. You somehow get the ball in his feet. And when even though he wasn't maybe the best player all season, if he's hot in that game, and he was, with the hat trick, that's off to the whole team for finding him and letting him shine that game.
Yeah, but these are all football matches. I'm sure there are other matches of all time, isn't it?
Other greatest match. Well, one thing my friend Sean Sperling said, don't forget about Pele. I just wanted to ask you guys off the cuff. Do you remember any great matches of Pele? Obviously, he had a lot of great goals scored. Or
I think his most famous time, certainly for someone that didn't. I was too young to watch him. Regularly, should we say? So the 1970 World Cup, which obviously we've already seen in retrospect, was his sort of shining time. It was here. That team of the Brazilian team of 1970 was when he was really the best. And funny enough, you should mention Pele, Jed. I was thinking about that this morning. Like, people forget. Certainly when I was growing up, Pele was number 1, the best player of all time. No one has ever come close. Now everyone's talking about Ronaldo and Messi and all this sort of thing, as though these guys, no one existed before him. It kind of winds me up a little bit how current generation now just doesn't even think about other anyone before their time, for example. Because when I was growing up, right, there was Pele, Di Stefano, Puskás, and Eusebio. These players were put out as the best of all time. I don't even remember them, and they were all saying they were better than the players were playing when I was young. Now it's like, oh no, Messi or Ronaldo, no one's ever come anywhere close. Well, it's not. They're good. I'm not saying they're that good, and they probably could even be the best of all time. But there's no debate. That's what bugs me.
I think this is a topic for another show. Best player.
Yeah, probably right.
Man.
Yeah. GOAT. We'll call that show the GOAT show, greatest of all time, and we can talk and debate, on the ball, talk and debate about greatest players in different sports and who's right, who's wrong. I'm usually right though, I must say.
But the key word is usually, not all the time.
I admit I'm not perfect, but I'm pretty close. And I would like to say that the 1999 U.S. Open at Pinehurst, we're talking golf now.
Okay.
One of the most amazing duels. It was between, at that time, Payne Stewart and Phil Mickelson. Payne Stewart was one of the greatest players at that time. Mickelson was up and coming, hadn't
Payne
won.
Stewart's the dude with the really bad trousers, isn't it? The plus
Yeah,
fours.
he dressed like the 1920s, 1930s style. He wore the beret and the kind of the puffy trousers.
Yeah, plus fours, I think they're called.
Okay, he's from Texas, and just a great image player for the PGA Tour at that time. And they were playing at Pinehurst in difficult conditions. They were battling back and forth. You know, they were tied, and one would go ahead, the other would go ahead. On the 17th, Stewart birdies the 17th. Everyone thinks it's all over. All he's got to do is hit his drive on the fairway on the 18th. But of course, he steps up and smashes it into the deep rough. So there's the opportunity for Mickelson. But Stewart somehow gets it on in three to 15 feet, drains the putt to save par. Mickelson, all the while, has been worried about his wife, who was in labor at the time with their first child. So Mickelson's dealing with Payne Stewart, dealing with all the cameras, dealing with the stress, and then also wondering if his wife has given birth, if the baby's okay, if his wife is okay. Shakes the hand of Stewart when Stewart wins, and Stewart reminds him, he's like, "Hey, buddy, you might have lost today, but you're a father." And all of a sudden, Mickelson was like, "Yeah, I guess I don't mind losing this match to you today." But it was a great duel. All the drama, with Mickelson and his baby, and then of course, as we all know, 4 months later, Payne Stewart dies in a plane crash. So that would be his last major victory, and it's a great way to go for Payne Stewart. He'll be remembered for that victory, and Phil came back to win many majors after that. So I think Phil learned a lot from Stewart on that day, and I'm sure if he pointed back to one period in his career, how did you learn to win? It was losing to Stewart at Pinehurst in '99 in the U.S. Open. So I think that was, to me, one of the greatest matches of all time.
Yeah,
I vaguely remember it. I can't say that I really remember it. But I remember him winning it. I think was it one of the first majors he'd won, Jim?
Yeah, he had won, I think, one other before. He didn't win a lot of majors, but yeah. So for him, it was a big deal to win a major.
Yeah,
just a great personality. So I think it was good for the game of golf.
Yeah,
but
no, fair enough.
I unfortunately I remembered when he passed away. It was a plane crash. I remembered. And of course,
my I guess step brother-in-law, he was an air traffic controller, and he was in charge of that plane at that that day.
Oh, I see.
He was monitoring it. They were trying to figure out what happened, and they presumed that there was a breach of the cockpit and that everyone lost consciousness because they couldn't hail anybody in the plane, and it just ran out of gas.
Hey Rick, if you look at who wrote that article that you just put up on the screen, Alex Myers. Not is that Alan Myers or Alex Myers?
It's Alex.
Okay, I thought it was the ex-Everton press secretary.
I thought so too. Yeah.
Everything relates to Everton. Everything.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Can you top that? Can anybody top that?
Well,
I probably could, but go on, Rick.
I don't know. For me, one of the greatest matches was this game by Nadal and Federer. And before I put on the screen, at this time in the mid 2005, 6, 7, 8, Nadal and Federer was the main rivals. And before that was Andy Roddick. Just before that was Andy Roddick with a young Federer. So Federer would have thought that he will conquer tennis all the way until a young Spanish dude who have a very funny way of hitting the ball came on and then defeated him in Wimbledon of all places. And I remember the 2008 game. I'm going to share this news where okay, I got it here. You can see from the screen that Nadal clinched his first Wimbledon. And that game was such an epic game that when Federer lost, of course, nobody likes to lose, but Federer really cried after that game. He was so distraught to lose the game to his greatest rival. And I remembered watching the game, and up to the last set and the last game, either one of them could still win the match, and it turned out to be Nadal. And of course, just as a disclosure, my current favorite tennis player is Nadal. I really like Nadal. Can you guys remember that match?
What do you like about Nadal's style?
Or the fact that he never give up. You know, he despite all odds, he always give his best. He'll run for every ball. He came back from injury. He looks like he never left. He's already playing tennis for more than 10 years, and he's still top 3. You know, I like his indomitable spirit, lah. The real spirit of sports. And the best thing is that he's such a gentleman. He's such a good friends with Federer. Just like even Federer. Federer is such a good sports person. You know, very good fair play, etc., etc. So these two are really good. The other one is Djokovic. Djokovic is another good guy. But I really like Nadal. If I put up a poster boy for great athlete, one of them will be Nadal.
I lost all respect for Djokovic when he played that little private tour last month and came down with COVID, and all of his buddies came down with COVID. I lost respect for him there because he went against the rules of what players were supposed to do. But Nadal, I thought he would only last a few years because he played so hard. He ran, like you said, he runs for everything. Such a physical player. I thought his body would break down. But it's a testimony to what great condition he's in, and how tough he is, that he's still around and that he's still playing at this level. So I totally agree. That was an unbelievable match. So many winners. I mean, I don't know how many winners there were in that match, but it wasn't one guy hitting the ball out or one guy hitting the ball into the net. It was winner after winner, back and forth. Nadal winner, Federer winner. And to me, you know, those are the best matches when both guys are at their top and just smashing winners. I mean, you're just jumping around on the couch and saying, no, he didn't. Oh no, did he just do that? Oh no. And then even a better shot after that. So yeah, that's great. Great
Mate, I can top that easy. Easy. That was nothing. That was a nothing game. No one even watched it.
It's one of the best tennis game, bro.
I'm going to take your Nadal Federer and raise you 2 Borg and McEnroes.
Oh,
2 Borg and McEnroes. Because 1980 and 1981, only 40 years ago, not long, not long ago, only 40 odd years ago. But if in my youth, big tennis fan, and I must admit, I sort of fell out of love of tennis when Federer came in. Actually, probably when Sampras came in and started dominating. I didn't like to see because I'm going to talk about my favorite tennis player who dominated. But anyway, with Borg, you know, he was by far the greatest tennis player at that time. You know, won 5 Wimbledons in a row, 4 in a row, and then beat McEnroe in an absolute doozy of a game, 5-setter. I think the 4th set was something stupid like 16-18. The number of games the Borg won the 16-18, and then won the 5th set. And the following year, McEnroe comes back and beats him for the first time in a Wimbledon final. But the contrast between the 2 players, and I suppose it is a little bit different to Federer and Nadal, because Federer and Nadal are both good guys and both great players. But I mean, look at that shirt as well. That Fila shirt. Oh, how cool is that? I was a big fan of the look of Bjorn Borg's gear at the time. He had his Fila shirt and Fila shorts. He had his Diodora trainers, and he had his Donne tennis racket. Now Donne's been absolutely bastardized by Sports Direct, but we won't go there. But anyway, that was for me. That's what I dreamed of, having a Donne tennis racket, Fila gear, Diodora trainers, and I would have been the happiest guy in the world. Anyway, but those 2 games, both really close. But the contrast in players, the Iceman from Sweden, Borg, it was just so cool, so calm, never got annoyed by anything. And then you had the craziness of McEnroe. And as a kid, I admired Borg, but as I got older, I loved McEnroe. But you know, if you ever get the chance of reading the autobiography of Borg, your image of him will be absolutely shattered when you read his autobiography.
You cannot be serious. You cannot be serious.
Yeah, exactly.
The autobiography of McEnroe, and
that's great as well. That's great as well.
This rivalry, and I think that was unbelievable. and you gotta love the white man fro of John McEnroe in this picture. The best white man fro right there. And I totally agree with you on the contrast in personalities. And that's what I mean, almost everyone was like Borg back then. The tennis was no emotion. Then you got guys like Julian and
Nastase and Tiriac. They were
Ozzy, Connors, Tiriac, they came in, but I think McEnroe kind of enabled players to show more emotion. And I think that's fine. You just be yourself on the court. Don't have to stuff it in if it's not you. And so I love the contrast. Borg was unbelievable. My backhand when I was 10 years old was styled
double
with
backhand. Mine was too. Mine was too.
So I even had a left-handed serve from McEnroe. I had a left-handed serve. So I mean, these things, as a kid growing up, you remembered, like you said, Julian, the other day. After the match, we'd be out playing tennis. We hadn't played in months, but we'd be out for weeks playing after these matches. So it was
great. Great times.
Well, but we respect lah, man, guys. Those two fellas were old men playing soft tennis lah.
But you see the size of the rackets. Didn't need these big monster heads. They needed just the small. That's skill. That's skill. Skill.
I mean, when I watched the old tennis from the 80s, of course through YouTube, and it's just two fellas playing for fun. Whereas you watch Nadal and Federer, then
you never watched Boris Becker. Boris Becker in his heyday, when he's 17 and he won Wimbledon, when he was diving all over the court, that was beautiful to watch. I mean, he was German and he beat all the other players that I liked. But fair play to Boris Becker. He was great to watch.
So Rick, I didn't realize that that Federer and Nadal all of a sudden became kung fu actors.
They are both Chinese. Don't you know that? They're both really they're Chinese. But there you go. But actually, McEnroe, I remember him being an angry guy. He was shouting at every match.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and he kept on like what James was saying. Are you serious? Are you serious? And he was shouting at the Empire. Well, what a player! What a player!
Yeah. Then, the good thing about McEnroe was he was a real skill player. Like he would pull off shots that would just make you, wow, look at that. Whereas someone like Borg was just consistent. He just played the percentages, and he just did. His mental game was off the charts. But where McEnroe was his mercurial talent. That's what he was. He was mercurial. It's a great word.
Word of the
day. It is mercurial. I like
Look
that
it up.
But you know what? I felt McEnroe, he needed to get angry to play well.
Yes.
That was his
very true. It's like, I always think because I don't know like you, if you play tennis, if I got angry, then I was all over the shop. I was you'd lose the set and everything. But McEnroe, he got better the more angry he got.
Yeah.
Which to be honest, it blew a lot of I can remember the commentators at the time said, "Oh, this is going to mess with McEnroe now. It could be all over for McEnroe." And guess what? He played better rather than worse.
Yeah.
Some athletes need that anger. Play angry, they play better. I remember a story. Yannick Noah's son, Joaquin Noah, played NBA basketball, and his first year he got to play in a game against Kevin Garnett, who was his idol. And at the end of the game, there was a lopsided game. Joaquin Noah leans over to Garnett and says, they had the same trainer, and he wanted to train together with Garnett. And he was like, "Hey, man, are you training this Saturday?" He said that like during the game. And Garnett looked at him and like got angry and swore at him or something. And for the rest of the game, he just like dominated Noah, to the point where Noah was like just sheltering in the corner. And Garnett was like, "Man, you don't talk to me on the court. You get me angry. Next thing I do, I own you." So some of these guys, Jordan was that way. Jordan would come up with some phantom issue that it wasn't even an issue.
You saw that in that documentary, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
That came out quite. He was looking for something to be annoyed by.
Yeah. So McEnroe was kind of that way too. He would get upset at a line call. Maybe it wasn't even a bad call, but he would get upset just to get himself motivated, I guess.
Yeah. And sometimes when I watch the old games, I felt that McEnroe was putting up a show. He's like he purposely need to get angry, But no doubt his left swings were very good. He's such a natural backhand, Now everybody plays backhand with two hands, but those days people like Borg and
Borg was a two-hander, wasn't it? Borg was the two-hander. I modeled my backhand on him.
McEnroe was a single, one hand, So
was it?
And even Federer, you look at Federer, where his backhand, it's just one swing.
Federer's backhand is what brought me back to a one-handed backhand because it's just so pure and so powerful. I had a two-hander for 20 years because of the guys that we're talking about, McEnroe and Borg, but I went back because of Federer.
I mean, you look at the players, right, who have dominated tennis in the last 30, 40 years. You know, you had Borg, then you had, I guess Edberg went through a period of being the best player. Then Lendl and but then who really dominated it was Sampras and then Federer, right?
And Agassi.
Agassi, but Agassi was one of those. He was there and thereabouts, but he was never as dominant as Sampras, never as dominant as Federer, never as dominant as Borg.
He played at the same time as Sampras.
Exactly. But one thing that I always look at those things, and I look at those players, and I think there's the thing that really stands them apart. Are they better players than some of the other players? Probably not. But where they're better and why they are so dominant is up there. Purely mental. Like, they know that every point is theirs. They believe with all of their heart, and when it comes to the pressure points, they know that that's their point. I'm going to win this point. Whereas other players start to doubt themselves. And we saw that with, in badminton with Lee Chong-wei against Lin Dan, those sort of things. I think it's Lee Chong-wei was way up there in terms of mental strength, but when it really mattered in the clutch points against the big players, he often came up short, and that's why people like Federer, Nadal, even Djokovic, and Sampras and Borg, they dominate because they believe without any doubt that they're going to win this point, and generally they do.
It's all up here, kids. It's all up here. You got to be all things being equal. You got to do the work. You got to do the physical work. But we presume when you're at that level that you're in good shape. But all things being equal, it comes down to this. And I must say, it's interesting that you talk about Federer and Sampras because my greatest match ever was when Federer played Sampras in Wimbledon in 2001. Young Roger Federer was ranked 15 in the world. He had never beaten a top 10 player. Sampras had won 7 out of the last 8 Wimbledons. He had won the last 4 straight Wimbledons. He was still in his prime. He was supposed to win this match. And they, first set goes to Federer. Federer takes the first set, 7-6 in a tiebreaker. So people are thinking, whoa, this boy is playing well today. Sampras comes back, takes the second set, 7-5. So 1 set apiece. Then Federer takes the third set, 6-4. So Federer's up 2-1. Sampras is thinking, am I done? This is the semifinals. Is this kid going to beat me? No way. He comes back in the fourth set, 7-6. Takes the tiebreaker, 2 sets apiece. But Federer finds it somewhere and takes the fifth set, 7-5, breaks Sampras's streak. And that was effectively the change of the guard. That one match, launched Federer up into stardom, and it was basically, I think, the changing of the guard where Sampras started to decline, and Federer pushed on and is still one of the top players.
It's like handing over the baton, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It was. So I think that was a great match. I mean, the match itself was unbelievable, but the meaningfulness of Federer then moving past Sampras, I think, to become the world's best player. That was the match. I'm sure he would point to that match and say that was when I upped my game, and I was really on the ball that day.
On the ball. But you know what was amazing? This was in 2001, and 19 years later, Federer is still in the top 10 of the tennis. In fact, he can still win any of the Grand Slam at this age, at this time. Brilliant.
Yeah. He's smart. Yeah. He takes time off. I mean, starting 3-4 years ago, he picked and chose which tournaments. He didn't play many hardcore tournaments. He wants to continue to play. He wants his body to last. So he's being very smart about how he plays, which tournaments he plays in. and you know he's a very smart guy, and he's giving us more of ability to watch him for more years. He's treating us by taking care of his body, and I think that's smart, and I thank him for it.
Yeah, yeah. So, Rick, you got anything that you want to bring up?
Yeah.
Before I just knock you out of the park, but go on.
Well, you know, I thought you're going to raise some great point about the two old men that you played. No big deal, lah.
Yeah, I've got a question for you, Rick. We were talking about getting angry to be motivated. I mean, like, I was thinking about the sport of rugby, and I mean, those guys never seem to really get angry, or they're always angry. I'm not sure which one it is, but
Controlled.
In the sport of rugby, I mean, foot stomping in the pile, and are rugby players, do they get angry, or how do they get motivated?
I always felt the rugby players. Well, today I'm wearing a All Blacks jersey of my favorite international team for the rugby union, not the rugby league. But I always felt the rugby players are gentlemen. They are able to handle the pressure, and they are focused on winning. So, in fact, talking about
they always say that rugby is a thug's game played by gentlemen, and football is a gentleman's game played by thugs.
Yep, correct, yeah. But thank you for mentioning rugby. I was about to share with you guys one of my personal greatest match was when Julian's English team was thrashed by one man from New Zealand. The late
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And that game, Lomu, he destroyed. He totally
destroyed is the best word.
Yeah, he destroyed. Yeah. So this is the screen, the YouTube from WRC or RWC, as you can see. That's him. That's just Lomu. Look at that. One push, one more push, bang through.
Andrew just completely walked over.
Oh. He crumbled
to be honest, that was history, that game, because it was, you just saw one player dominate. I mean, absolutely dominate the sport.
Yeah.
You know, and that was his sort of crowning glory. I think.
Look at that again.
He had obviously, he had some other great games, but he was. They fall off him. Look, this guy, Rob Andrew, just fall.
He's fast. He's faster than the fastest guy, fastest winger. He's more powerful than the center guys. I mean, what an amazing, talented athlete he was. It was so fun to watch.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to
documentary about him. No,
face him
on
on
documentary about him.
Oh yeah,
it's worth seeing. I can't remember what it's called, but search Journal Owner documentary. But it's about his life and how sad it became further down the line with his kidney disease and what have you.
Yeah.
But amazing. I agree with you, Rick.
You know what? Before he passed away, because he passed away recently, he was traveling, and when you travel, sometimes you get blood clot on your body, and due to his kidney, he had blood clot. So he actually flew to South Africa because in that tournament, New Zealand, which should have won the World Cup, by the way, but they went up against a very passionate South African country who wanted to show that they are now outside of apartheid, and that was the time when a black president was supporting a white rugby team in Africa, and it became a unifying factor. So that South African team wasn't a good team at all, but they managed to beat Lomu's New Zealand team. So what happened was Lomu, who has so much respect for his opponent, particularly the player who was marking him, the South African player, that African player was going through a terrible disease. I think it's the motoneuronic whatever.
Motor neuron disease.
Yeah. So Lomu, despite he was very ill, flew to South Africa to meet the player because that player was going to pass away, and unfortunately, he himself passed away. So it was really a tragic, very emotional story. When I read that, I actually cried, shed a tear for Lomu because you know I was very lucky. I met him in Malaysia when he came for the Commonwealth Games in 1998 in Malaysia. So that we had a rugby sevens tournament at the Kelana Jaya Stadium. Yeah. So I went there just to see him, and he's
awesome. That's really cool.
He's like, you know, I'm already.
As we said, Rick, you are quite small, so
exactly.
everyone looks huge.
You know, even for Asian standards, I'm a shorty. So can you imagine you meet this big giant? But
Yeah, I can imagine.
So what a match! But he destroyed England that day.
Talking of England, I'm going to blow all of you out the water now. And James is going to look bewildered throughout my description. England, New Zealand in last year's World Cup final. Not only was obviously England won, I'm obviously very happy with that. That's not why it's the greatest match of all time, because of how close it was and the actual what happened. All right, cut a long story short, after the end of the match, they're tied on 241 runs each. I mean, if you know anything about one-day cricket, the team chasing the target set by the team that batted first, right? You're chasing a target, right? It was 241 at the end of the 50 overs. Right, 6 balls in an over, so it was 241 each. So what they did, they have a super over, which is, I guess, like golden goal or penalties in soccer. What happened was England scored 15, all right, and in the final ball of New Zealand's, they were equaling the 15. So it was 241 runs each after 50 overs. England then score 15 in the super over, which is the tiebreaker. Then New Zealand bat, they score 15 and they have 1 ball left. All he has to do is score a run. He gets run out. So they're both tied, 241 runs. Plus 15 in the super over, and because England had scored more boundaries, they'd hit the boundary more times than New Zealand had. England won the World Cup. I mean, it was so. I mean, I watched it, and I've never been so nervous, so captivated, so my heart beating. Obviously, it's England, so it's going to be like that. But for an Englishman, but if you didn't have to know anything about rugby, and just hearing the commentators of how close it was to build the tension. Tension was just so. Sorry, cricket. Yeah, but the tension was just palpable. I mean, I defy any sport or any game that has produced on the edge of your seat sort of stuff. I guess that Man United victory in the UEFA Champions League in '99, where it was just they were getting battered all match. And then just out of nowhere comes Teddy Sheringham scores, and then Solskjaer scores. That was drama beyond belief. I mean, that's the essence of sport. But this one, with England winning the World Cup, which was the first time I think they won the World Cup, which was great, but also the fact of how close it was. If I was a New Zealand fan, I would be gutted because you're so close, and yet no one's going to remember that they were close. They're just going to remember that they lost.
Just like Reading.
Reading.
I still think the Malaysian bookie was involved, Julian. I'm sorry to say.
I'll tell you, that match might have been tense. It might have been dramatic. But Rick was talking about politics sometimes when he was talking about South Africa and Nelson Mandela supporting the team and the black and white. And sometimes politics does enter in, or it's kind of like in the background of major sports events. And I think probably the greatest match ever. I mean, the name of the match is Miracle, right? The Miracle on Ice. I mean that. And Julian had mentioned this as well. And I just think that a match that is called the Miracle on Ice, the 1980 USA versus Russia, basically semifinal Olympics game, was unbelievable because
was
obviously
it not the final? Jim, was it not the final?
It was not. We had to go on and beat Finland in the final. So that match, it was the biggest match because obviously the Russians were all basically professional players. Back then in the Olympics, you weren't allowed to be a professional and play sport as a professional to in the Olympics. But the Russians basically were. They were all paid to play hockey full time. The Americans were a bunch of college students from Minnesota, most of them, a lot of them from the East Coast, Boston, Massachusetts, Connecticut. but more than half the team was from Minnesota, and the coach Herb Brooks was from Minnesota. All these young kids, 19, 20, 21 years old, playing against these 28, 29, 30-year-old seasoned veterans in Russia. And Russia had just beaten in a exhibition game. They'd beaten the U.S. something like 8-2 or something, like 2 weeks just before this. So the U.S. felt that they were going to get steamrolled. The Russians were so overconfident, but the U.S.
video there, Rick.
Yep, go on.
I was saying video. There was a video there. You scrolled down to a headline.
I had to stop it. Sorry about that. Yeah, go on. It was a good game actually.
No, I was saying play the video.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean it was basically David against Goliath, and David being the U.S.
The
team.
big red machine. That's what they're
exactly.
called, isn't it? The big red machine.
With the Cold War ongoing, the U.S. playing at home. I remember I was watching the game. My dad was fixing the car at a car workshop, and there were probably 8 or 9 of us huddled around a little black and white TV, and we're watching this game. And every time, Russia went up, but the U.S. came back, and then they went ahead, and all work stopped in that workshop. We didn't care that it took 2 extra hours to fix the car because everybody was watching this game, and it meant so much being Minnesotan, but obviously to the whole country and in a way to the world. It meant that the bullies, I guess people could have argued maybe America were the bullies, but
pretty much. Don't play the innocent, plucky underdogs.
but Russia's whole image was very tough, very, like the Rocky, what was it, Rocky 4 or whatever, Ivan Drago.
They were Ivan Drago, definitely.
It was kind of that, that Rocky moment, where the underdog came and won. And they were just a bunch of kids, and they were happy, and they raised their game, and it was meaningful. It was meaningful when they won that match. And
I was a young kid in England watching it. It was Lake Placid, and there were 2 things that I remember in Lake Placid. Eric Heiden, the speed skater who won God knows how many gold medals, and that Miracle on Ice. I can remember because I was following the Russians because they're so good. They were the big red machine, and they were they 4-time champions, Olympic champions, and then it was like whoa. I remember it's probably one of the first ice hockey matches I ever saw. In fact, probably not one of. It was the first ice hockey match I ever saw.
That's unfortunate because how does it get any better than the first match that you watched?
I haven't watched much since. Put it that way.
Yeah, growing up in Minnesota, we're ice hockey's in our blood and it's in our veins, and so that was great that so many Minnesotans were on that team and that the coach was on the team, and the coach actually, Herb Brooks, was the last guy cut from the 1960 team that was the last time the U.S. won the gold in the Winter Olympics, and they beat the Russians in '60 as well. So it was very meaningful for him, and I think that was just one of the best matches ever. Rick, what do you think? You think that was one of the best matches ever?
Yeah, in fact, the funny thing was, I remembered that match when I was a young boy. Of course, we don't get live, and it was in Russia, so the Malaysians were not taking part in the Olympics. But my story, I read when I was a kid. I was keep on reading about this Miracle on Ice. Of course, I didn't know what the hell it meant. But I must confess, only many years later, when I was in law school, in fact, and when I happened to, by chance, to read this story in one of the magazines. In those days, we don't have a laptop or handphone, so I happened to chance upon a magazine to read about it, and it was really thrilling to read about it. I think it was one of those against all odds. And correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there a movie about this?
So there's a movie it's called Miracle, and Kurt Russell does a great job of mimicking the Minnesota accent. And the shame about that is obviously they talked a lot to Herb Brooks, the coach, about and Kurt Russell actually met him a bunch of times to understand his mentality and how he drove his players so hard, and to kind of bring that into the movie. And I would definitely watch that movie if I was you, Rick. But just before the week before the movie was released, Herb Brooks died in a car accident in Minnesota.
Oh man,
he was never able to see the movie. So it was a tragic thing. But I think they devoted the movie to him, and they put that in there. But it's a great movie. If you watch it, you see how he got those players to to bring every ounce of talent out of them, which is what you need. And the mental element, which I think you guys were talking about earlier, so important. And that was a great movie. Go out, check it out. I think from this show, you got to watch the Jonah Lomu documentary. Got to check out the Miracle movie, and watch maybe one Everton football game in your life, and that should be enough.
Hey, that's a very important thing to do. Talking about Everton, I'm not going to show the video, but I think Julian will agree with me. Match of all time for an Evertonian, 1985, Everton beating Bayern Munich in England, in Goodison, against all odds. We beat them.
You know what's really annoying about that? I was a season ticket holder at that time, and I had been to all of the European Cup Winners' Cup games except that one. I decided I could have gone, and I stayed at home. I listened to it on the radio of all things, and it's the one match that everyone talks about. If you're an Evertonian, as the greatest of all time. Just
were you grounded? Were you grounded? I mean,
because I knew everyone wanted to go. I knew it was going to be busy, and I didn't know I was going to be able to get in or anything like that. But I wish I was there. But it is what it is.
If I can travel back time, because by 1985, I've been following Everton for more than a year. And if I can travel back time, I'll definitely go back to that match.
Yeah. Every Evertonian would. Yeah. And if you ask any, there's recently another documentary called Howard's Way about Everton and during the 80s. And they asked a bunch of players that played in that match, and they said, if you could remember one match and play that one match over again, out of 100, many of them have played 400 or 500 games in their careers. Every single one of them said that would be the match I would play.
Yeah,
I would recreate.
Well, that's the Evertonians' match of all time. Yeah,
Everton was on the top of their game then, weren't they? They were at the top, and they were. That was kind of the. After that, it was. Times weren't as good as back then.
Yeah, Liverpool's fault. That's always.
But to be fair, Julian, even if we were going to play Europe, we were going to go up against a very powerful AC Milan team at the time. In the late 80s. But between 86 and 87, had we played in the Champions League, then known as the European Cup, I fancied our chances.
Why didn't you play? Why were you not allowed?
Because Liverpool fans were responsible for the deaths of a lot of Juventus fans. Can't remember the number.
39.
They were fighting. 99 or whatever.
So 39.
They were fighting. 39. Sorry. And they were fighting, and a wall collapsed, and a bunch of Juventus fans got killed, and so all British sides were banned from Europe.
Yeah, it was quite strange that they banned everybody.
That's I don't know, 5 years. So it was quite a few years. Yeah.
That's a serious. Well, anyway,
not that Everton fans are bitter about that at all.
But yeah, we would have been a good. But to be fair, Julian, I mean, putting aside Liverpool or whatever, but actually even if we came back after that ban, if we had maintained a property, we could still challenge, because all the other clubs recovered. We never recovered from that. So I think we also have to look at our board.
Because we couldn't play in Europe, we lost a lot of our players, like Trevor Steven, Gary Stevens, a bunch of players, and Gary Lineker the following year. They all left because they couldn't play in Europe.
Yeah,
they went to Scotland or.
Enough of Everton for today. I can see James yawning. He's going to sleep soon. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's 12 o'clock. Thank you very much for tuning in to episode 4 of On the Ball. And today we discussed about the match of all time. The clear winner was me. My match of all time was clearly the best that I had. And Julian's one was quite a pathetic attempt, showing two old men with funny hairstyle. But I give James was a too emotional game. The leg pain stood, and the miracle in eyes. Those were very emotional. And then Julian, of course, talked about something about cricket I didn't understand, but never mind. But I'll give both Julian and James about the choice of the soccer matches, football matches, brilliant games you choose, and then. But anyway, thanks for preparing for this talk, James and Julian.
Yeah.
We'll
Shout out to all Racing Club Genk fans.
Any
None
last
of you are watching this.
any last comments, James?
Twins, go Twins. Major League Baseball starts in a week and a half, 60-game season. Twins will be the champs. We'll have a whole episode about them in a couple months.
Julian,
No, we
anything
won't.
for you?
Not really, mate. Not really.
Well, I'm just going to take advantage of this. Other than saying thank you to all of you, I just want to wish my beloved daughter Ashley, who I
Happy birthday, Ashley.
Yep, happy birthday to my daughter.
Happy birthday, Ashley.
And I just want to warn all the guys out there who's drooling over her because she's so beautiful that I'm around.
She takes after your mum, doesn't she? She takes after his mum.
You know, I'm going to say something sexy here about my wife is hot. So that's why my daughter is very pretty. So all you guys, watch out.
Since you're shout outing your daughter's birthday, sorry, it was my son's birthday earlier this week as well. I turned 18. So
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Dante.
All right.
The next future track star of America.
I heard.
I was showing him one day.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you very much. I'm going to end this broadcast. Hold on. Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next week at the same time, same place, 11 o'clock. And we will let you know by Wednesday and Thursday what we will be having a dialogue about. Thank you very much. Adios, amigos.
Thanks.
From the three amigos. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Farewell.